really like when you feel those negative emotions or you're in an icky place, that's life's gift to you. That's God's gift to you. Your emotional barometer will tell you if you're in alignment or not. And so if you can just get to a place where you know what it feels like in your body to be in a low vibration versus a high vibration or a heart vibration, then you can start recognizing when, oh, I went down that rabbit hole with my boss or, whatever. He said, if I can do it, I'll do it. Like, I'll do it if I can do it. So we had a little pact. And after he passed away, I actually was there holding his hand. I saw his spirit leave his form. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced. And I had been a hospice nurse for a long time, but I still had a little bit of that fear and of the unknown and not diving in. With him, I decided to be fully present with him, and I was able to experience that exchange. And if anybody's going through that, if they can shift their thinking around it, it is such a magical time to be in the presence of somebody that's passing. It's holy. It's very holy.
All right, my friends, I am here with Michelle Lebetter, and she's a hospice nurse, and she's had an NDE experience. She's going to share her experience with us, and perhaps if we have time, she might go into a few experiences as a hospice nurse that might be related to this sort of thing. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Glad you could make it. So why don't we jump right in and tell us your story about your NDE?
Okay. So I want to preface this by saying I just started coming out with this in October, and I'm just a regular old human being like anybody else. I'm a hospice nurse, and so I'm still getting used to having conversations in this manner. So bear with me. I'm going to get better, but this is still new to me. So I'll, you want to start with my near-death experience? Actually, will you
Yeah,
let me start kind of with the beginning of like my upbringing because it kind of flows it together.
yeah, you start wherever you feel moved to start and take it wherever you want to go.
Okay. So so I grew up not in the traditional sense that I just was raised by my father for the first 7 years of my life. And um I I had a really challenging upbringing. There was not a lot of stability. There was some abuse in that relationship, in family relationships. And so I had a very distorted view of what connection meant with just human beings because of my traumatic upbringing. I, I didn't, I knew that I wanted to get out of this very difficult and challenging situation. And so I was that bad kid that pushed against my folks to kind of get moving on and get out. I ended up marrying very young. I married the same month that I turned 19, and to a beautiful soul. And in hindsight, I realized did it for all the wrong reasons as far as I truly needed to get out of the environment that I was in. And he was a great guy. And I thought, this is an exciting part of life. I'm sure that I can make this work. So move forward with that. I was married for 18 years. I had two children. And as they got older, my demons started to pop in from my upbringing, but I didn't necessarily know that's what was happening. I just felt like I had a hole in my heart, or I've heard people say a hole in your love cup. So I just couldn't fill it up, whether it was with, I ended up leaving the marriage after 18 years, and I truly was just trying to find love and life and this happiness that people say that's out there. And so I left that marriage, and of course divorce leaves an impact on the children. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm doing this, I'm gonna, show them that how powerful women can be, and they can do whatever they set their mind to. Like, so in my mind, I'm thinking this is gonna be a good thing. And their little minds, that it was more like I started traveling a lot. I started running marathons. I became very involved in my business. I was, moving up that ladder. And I had kind of left them. And so, and if I can back up for a second, I left out an essential part. I never met my birth mother. And my father had told me when I was around 5, when I inquired, like, how come all these other families have a mom and I don't? He had said that she had died when I was at childbirth. And at 5 years old, you don't, what do you do with that? I didn't know what to do with that. It wasn't like it was, I understood or I don't have a mom. It wasn't like I was missing something.
Right.
But when I was 14 and I was, a part of a new family, my dad married, they had a son. I felt kind of like the outcast. When I was 14, my biological mom called on the phone. And so the trust issues were huge. Like if you're told somebody's gone, this is my mother. I never got to meet her. She was actually very sick. So this happened before she passed away and I didn't get to meet her. But there was a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, a lot of feelings of abandonment that I had picked up in my childhood. And of course, I thought that I had, didn't have any issues with any of that because I was strong and I was doing fine and my life looked pretty good if you looked at it from the outside. But those demons crept in, and even at the time, I didn't realize what I was doing was ultimately searching for love. But I was masking it as, like, all those things I said, I'm going to show my kids how amazing you can be and the things that you can achieve. So you get justified where you are and what you're doing. So that's kind of my, as far as my upbringing. So there was a lot of subconscious wound that I didn't even recognize was in there. So I went on my merry way, trying to find this love and joy and happiness and fill this hole that I felt that I had in my love cup and in my chest. And I tried everything. I got into addiction. I was drinking. I was, numbing because I wasn't good at feeling raw emotion. I had had enough of that in my childhood. And so I although I was carrying on life very well, I was struggling deep inside, but I was still pushing through and thinking, lots of people are like this. People I know and friends, we all kind of live this grind and we're just going through life. And this is kind of normal. And so it didn't dawn on me that I really needed to look at something deeper until my altered reality experience when I had an accident. So fast forward, yeah, I was a wounded person, not even recognizing it. I thought I was normal. But I did cause a lot of harm to the family. And uh, so I was dealing with this shame and guilt, even though trying to justify it. On February 13th, 2019, I was traveling as a hospice nurse and I went to Colorado to do my first assignment. That assignment ended prematurely. And so then I had to get to Texas for my next assignment. And I was trying to outrun a snowstorm. And I ended up having a car accident. And I had been feeling off that whole day. And I was just pushing myself. And I remember looking, and I had 23 more miles to go. And I had rolled the window down because I wasn't feeling quite myself. And it was a severe snowstorm. So the snow was like blowing sideways.
Wow.
And I was following truck lights we were getting ready to go up over a pass. And that's the last thing I remember. I kind of turned to the right and I felt like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And that was kind of lights out after that. So I did wake up to the paramedics trying to pull me from the car. And I had such a profound sense of peace. It was, I didn't even recognize that there was so much peace in this because I had a very hellish experience when I went through my altered reality. So I was so focused on that, but that I do want to share. There was such a sense of peace. I was able to engage. Neuro, I was intact. I did break my back and I did have a closed head injury. So I wasn't totally intact, but I could get, my point across. And that sense of peace was beautiful. They took me to the first hospital. They realized I had some internal bleeding. They were going to need to do emergent surgery that night, and they had to transfer me to another hospital to get that done.
Right.
And I remember the surgeon coming in and saying, we got to get it done tonight. And he had told me he had done like 10 cases before me. And I thought, oh, I don't know if don't know if I want you doing that.
Yeah.
But he was like, we can't wait. So I was like, okay, get a cup of coffee, get yourself comfortable, and then we'll go for it. Um, and it was during I think my altered reality started somewhere between the time I was put to sleep and about 5 days later when I woke. And essentially, what happened is I presented in this warehouse type setting. It was very dark and cold and just an icky feeling. And I I felt my daughters were behind me and I was bringing them into this warehouse to, show them something. I don't know what I was doing, but when I turned around, they walked out of the warehouse, the door locked behind them, and there was like a little window, and I could see them walking off into this just barren land, like land that had would have been combed down by heavy equipment. And they turned back and looked at me and gave me this look like, you really messed this up, right? You screwed it up, mom, and we're not coming back. We don't care. They just kind of walked away. And I was very confused. And I was like, what is happening? And fear started to overcome me. And then I stepped into a place where I started to have like a life review. But in this life review, it was like everything I had ever been through as a child, every negative thing that I could think of, all the feelings of guilt and shame and abandonment were compounded. And it was just the scariest feeling in the world. And I was confused and I didn't know what was happening. And so it's rolling through these different, scenes. And it was like I was right back in that scene, like I was there again. So all the emotion again, but everything's compounded at once. So it was like all the events were happening all at once. Very overwhelming. And then I see like footage of the film, and I see a little girl, and I see this horrific, torturous upbringing that was worse than I had gone through. And but I felt her emotion and I was all up in that. So I was confused. I was like, what is happening? And then I saw a little boy, and the same thing, very unloving, uncaring, cold, hard mom. Like I was in their dialogue and I was feeling his fear and I was feeling sadness. It was, like it was just overwhelming sense of fear. It was horrible. And I saw some other scenes, like some of my old patients. One was HIV positive, and he was in a bed and like kind of strapped to the bed and just looked so uncomfortable. And I remembering I have to go find his partner to get him help. And as I started to do that, the film went away and I woke up a little bit and I saw an African American lady sitting there, and she was watching me because I guess as I was moving through what I was going through, I was acting it out and I was trying to get out of the bed, and I had just had back surgery and rods put in, and you're not supposed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So they had to have a sitter with me. They So that's who I saw in the corner. And but all of a sudden it kind of blended, and I saw her as my sister, who was my biological mom's daughter, who I'd met a couple times. And in my whatever was happening in my mind, I said to her, help me. And I was saying, help me get out of what is happening in this warehouse. And I thought, she's my mom. Well, this lady's looking at me, and, I'm getting out of the bed. I'm asking her for help. It looks crazy on that side. But on my side, I was justified for what I was doing.
Yeah.
So now I have so much compassion for people that are sick and in the bed and out of their mind.
Sometimes being out of the mind can be a good thing, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So that whole thing, I don't know where it happened in those days that I was not, with it. They did have people watching me 24/7, so I wouldn't hurt myself. they can't sedate you when you have a closed head injury because they want to make sure that you're coming to and you don't have like bleeding and that sort of thing. So they have to keep your neuro as intact as possible. So no sedation. And so, but I wasn't, conscious, aware, awake during that time until I saw the sitter. And then I would kind of go in and come out and go in and come out. So when I got out of the hospital, came home, I was so afraid and didn't want to tell anybody about it because I didn't want anybody to know I went to hell. Like I knew for sure that I was in hell. I need to back up. I need to back up because right before I saw the person and I was kind of in and out, seeing somebody obviously engaging, but out of my mind engaging. Right before that, when the last of the tape was playing for the little boy,
Hmm.
I felt the temperature change in the room, and I thought that it was like it's starting to get warm because it was cold and dark. And I see a light from above, and when I look up, the tiles are like lifting so that this light could come in. And I was so fear engaged that I thought it was lava. And so I was just like, bend over and kiss your backside goodbye. And I hope it's quick. I was so afraid of this light that I couldn't look up at it. Um, Looking back now, I know it to be something completely different, but it took me 2 years to continue to go down the crapper. I lost my job. I ended up with $8 in my checking account. My best friend was dying of cancer, but it was beautiful that I got to spend 16 months with him and I got fired. So I didn't think it that way when it happened. I thought, this is just what else can go wrong? I continued to drink. I became addicted to the pain medication for my back. I was just a real mess. I was a
So,
total mess.
did you
So
think that this was because you felt like you were in hell during that time and that you were
I
kind
just
of,
when yeah, and I had no idea what that whole thing meant. It scared me. I wasn't good at feeling emotions or looking and processing anything. So I was drinking and numbing because it felt much better to be there. It wasn't like I was trying to become an addict. I just wanted relief. And I now recognize people that struggle with substances. They're not bad people. They are broken people that are just they can't feel their emotions, and so they're trying their best, even if they don't understand what they're doing. They're just trying to feel better. So,
yeah.
but that was an essential piece, and it's really out of the timeline. I apologize for that, Blaine.
No,
But
don't worry. Just tell it
so
however you feel comfortable telling it.
yeah. So moving forward, it took me 2 years. I went down the rabbit hole and I did get to spend that 16 months with my best friend, Brett, before he passed away. And we had some magical moments. And he started to show me a way to look at God that I was willing to look at. Because before I almost had an aversion to God, because growing up, I thought this God that people talk about, how cruel is he to me? Like, why would he be so cruel? And then I was exposed to the Catholic Church when my dad married my mom when I was 7. I call her my mom, but my stepmom. I went into the Catholic Church, and that just whirled me in a tailspin, like all the fear that came from that, and
Yeah.
how you have to be like so good. So I'm struggling trying to just survive in my home environment. And I'm not making choices that the traditional kid makes because I'm just trying to get out. So I thought, well, and I'm probably going to go to hell because of that, right? So I had a very distorted view of what things look like. Now I'm 53, so it's not like, you know, um, the programming was deep and I didn't recognize it. When I when my friend passed away, and that was such a beautiful experience. If we have time, we'll go back or we'll come back and try it again. That something shifted within me. And I had started doing meditation. I didn't have a clue what I was doing at the beginning, but I got to a place where it's like, come on, I'll do whatever. So, except read the Bible. I would do it. And now I'm in the Bible now. The Bible is a beautiful book. But at that time, it wasn't going to be the Bible. So I thought I'll try some meditation. And I would sit there and try, and I was like, I don't know if this is working. I don't know what's happening. But all of a sudden, I something happened, and a portal opened to the bowels of my soul, and I realized that I was being given a gift. And as I started to ask God, life force energy, universal love, whatever you want to call that, that breathes through us, when I would get still in my meditations, I would ask questions and say, what was that trying to show me? And how can I see it differently? And those two questions just opened up a place in my heart where it was as cool as, I can't even explain it. It was just such an opening that I started hearing the voice of, and I still don't know who it is, but the voice of God or my guardian angels. And remember now, this is all new to me. So I don't have verbiage that most people do. But the voice would guide me and say, I was shown that the reel that I was watching was the little boy and the little girl were two primary people that were my abusers.
Mm.
And I was being asked by God, my highest self, to consider looking at it from their perspective and look at what you have done, thinking you were doing right, and kind of like just look at them as human beings who are trying their best, who have been misguided, who have been conditioned, who have done, they're no different than you. And there was a powerful shift. And the compassion that I felt for them was like, wow, it's, I felt so sorry that they had to go through what they went through. And I recognized that even in the most distorted, excuse me, I wasn't expecting tears. I have not had that before.
It's okay.
In the most distorted way, they were trying to feel better about what they were doing or who they were, or and they were just lost and they were misaligned with their source. And so when that lifted, it gave me an opportunity to start practicing this on all those people, right? That I had resentments against, or my ex-husband and all, and playing the the beauty of this is I am so free from harbored resentments. From I see everyone in my life as an essential key player, and the forgiveness that has come as a process. It didn't happen overnight. But as I truly have, there's nothing that holds me to anything, and that's the most freeing feeling. Like no one has control over me anymore, because I I have gratitude for the role they played in my journey, because it's helped me to become who I am.
Yeah.
I I had no idea that you could actually shift your perspective to the truth and to what love and light is and the source that we come from. um I thought that connection was broken. I didn't even know that there was any such thing as being, connected to that created you. And so I was shown in one of my meditations kind of a diagram, like, God being the ocean, right? And
Yeah.
and I've heard people talk about this since then. But the way I could perceive it is God being that ocean, and that we are all waves on the ocean, and it's never, we're not separate, we're one in its totality. And now I know some of this is really far-fetched, but as I share it, it's such truth, and I know that everyone can get here, if they're willing, right? It's scary to step into the unknown. It's scary to admit that you might have your own boo boos. It's scary to go into the bowels of the soul where all your hurt is, and shine a light on it. But it is the most liberating thing that you can do,
It
because
is.
yeah, it is living heaven on earth. I
We
don't
don't
know
talk
how
we
else to.
don't talk much about that here, so
but it did take a complete shift. It did take me um, knowing that I am a part of God. I am that light. I am that love. And I recognized and received the message that it's not about learning to earn love, which I was trying to do in all these distorted ways. It's about remembering the love that we are. And when you
Yes.
get that, it's like you start coming from that place and life starts to show up for you. It's like the stuff, this serendipities, the sequencing of events. It's like you can't make that shit up. Like you can't, like things that happen. It's like it's a beautiful, miraculous way to live.
Yeah,
So
that was a huge change in my life, seeing that everything is for you, not against you. Even the so-called,
absolutely,
yeah, even the
yes,
so-called bad stuff is actually for you. It's
absolutely,
teaching you something, it's making you stronger,
yes,
different things like that. So yeah,
yeah.
that was pretty
And
eye-opening
what
for
I
me.
recognize now, you know, and trying to integrate everything that had happened and looking back at it and embracing all of it and moving through it, the the light that I was seeing was the light of love. That was the light of God, the creative force energy that was trying to shine the light on my shit so that I could look at it differently. But I was so afraid. I just was like, oh no. I was, you know, I thought it was going to burn me. So,
So
but
you
once
could,
I did get there, it was like, wow.
yeah, so you can address it and let it go, instead of fighting against it, so to speak.
Yes. And you do start to see how all things that have happened in your life really like when you feel those negative emotions or you're in an icky place, that's life's gift to you. That's God's gift to you. Your emotional barometer will tell you if you're in alignment or not. And so if you
Mm.
can just get to a place where you know what it feels like in your body to be in a low vibration versus a high vibration or a heart vibration, then you can start recognizing when, oh, I went down that rabbit hole with my boss or you know whatever. But you're a little bit ahead of the game, and even if you screw it up, you get to reflect on it at the end of the day and say, oh man, that was a missed opportunity because I gave my power to that person, right? And that still happens. I'm far from perfect, but I don't get triggered as much as I did over the silly things that I would get triggered left and right. Oh, I was one of the traffic people, right? And then when I was shown that in my meditation, it was like, you have what in the world are you doing? You have like you've just given all your power to that person in the car. And you have no idea. They might be on the phone, which you've been on the phone. You can't like, come on. So yeah, I could ramble and I get excited, so bear with me
Oh no.
if I'm streaming all over. But yeah, so that's my story. There's just so many magical things around that, and I'm just so grateful that since I've been sharing it, it's a lot of people are seeing the truth in it as well for themselves. That you like you said, life is happening for us, not to us. And if we can get in alignment with our highest source and our most divine self and live from that place and look at our boo-boos, like you can be freed from all that is going on around you.
Yeah, yeah. There's a scripture says, "Stand in the holy place." I have a Christian background, and I know the scriptures really well too. And so now I think I
Oh,
finally
well, you could
actually,
teach me a lot because I don't.
I think I finally understand them. And I have some videos where I talk about this, and one of them is the real secrets, of this, and uh, I'll just spill it right here. It's all metaphor for you for what's going on inside of you. It's not a history, although there may be some historical references, but that kind of thing. And once you see it that way, you can never go back and see it the other way. And as a quick example, Jesus represents your highest self or your divine nature, and
Yes,
Satan represents your carnal or your animal nature. And so the two are always at war until you realize they're both part of the same spectrum, and you kind of
right.
take the center, and that then you can see the things that you normally would have been upset and angry about. You can see those as actually being for you and teaching you and helping you move forward and become stronger, and so on
Absolutely.
and so
Yeah.
on. So. But so did you come back with, did you, after, so it sounds like it took you a while to process a lot of the stuff that you went through and felt and so on. And then, so did you notice any kind of gifts, any psychic gifts, any intuition, enhanced intuition, anything like that, that became
Well,
more pronounced?
yeah, I have a pretty direct line. Um, and when I go into those meditative states, because now I'm a meditation junkie, I'm not a drug junkie or an alcoholic junkie. When I go into those states, the conversation and the information that comes is beautiful, and but it's just, it's very, most of it's very directed at me to help me improve. But I also recognize I'm not here to change anybody's mind on anything. I just want to share my story. And if it resonates with somebody, I want to give people hope. And, if you're in a really dark place and when you're not feeling good, you feel it in your visceral body. We're energetic beings. And so what it feels like when you're not in a high vibration. There is a way, that feeling is God saying to you, like, here's an opportunity, let's check this out. Or the people that triggered you, it's like, if you can look at that to say, why is it that I'm getting so triggered by what they're saying? It's never about, it's everything that you're seeing from somebody else mirroring for you is about you. And when you get triggered about that, that's your stuff, not their stuff,
Yeah.
right? That was a huge one for me too. And we're not taught to think like that. But if you can shift your stuff over, your thinking into this new way of seeing it, the only reason you're reacting is because you have something within you that needs to be looked at and healed. Otherwise, you could move through stuff and you would have no attachment to it, and you could just observe it and giggle at a lot of the silliness that we do in our you know
Yeah.
um so I just want to share that so that people can tap into it, because it's available for everyone, and I know that life is supposed to be joyful. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me of a favorite quote of mine by Neville Goddard. Do you
can i
know who Neville
can I
Goddard is? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Do you want me to hush her? Because
Oh, no,
she might go.
no.
Okay. Okay. I have read a little bit of Neville Gard and listened to some video. Ashley, no ma'am. No ma'am. Okay. Um, but I don't, if you ask me like what his philosophy is, and I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head.
Well, one of the quotes that stuck with me, and I've read a lot of his stuff, and I really love most of his stuff, and agree with him on most things. But he said, "How can you be angry? How can I be angry at my brother?" He said, "Don't be angry at anybody for what they do to you. They're just showing you who you are on the inside."
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
And when you see people reacting to you, or, getting offended with something you might say, or you start to see that's their stuff. Like, the you are definitely the mirror and the trigger, but it's not yours until you buy into it and start to then you're all in it. Then it's both
yeah,
yours. But when you can see it as, like, somebody is angry or talking harsh to you or belittling you or cutting you down, or that's not about you. Most people don't even know who you are. So once I got that one, it was like, wow.
yeah,
And you just begin to engage differently with people. And I see people now is we're all a divine extension of that source energy. That's how we are still one, right? We're all, and how else can source energy experience itself except for having this experience through us, right?
yeah,
And so it has to encompass the dark and the light. How would the light know what it is without being exposed to the contrast, right? So
yes,
I look at the people that have harmed me, or we talk about these terrible people that have, kill and murder. I almost feel like we're co-creators with life force energy, with God. And so the fact that you're playing a villain, oh wow, I'm glad it wasn't me that had to play that villain. And that might sound selfish, but in order for God and life force energy to experience itself, it has to have all of it. So I don't believe that there's a hell. I believe that's a state of being that actually lives within us. I had no idea that was the case. um and once I got that, that same heavenly place lives within us too. And it's just about learning to reconnect with that and remember what that is and remember who you are.
Yeah, that the ancient wisdom teaches that we're here experiencing duality, and we're kind of born into the animal nature or the carnal nature, as the scriptures call it, and the task is to rise back up into the divine nature, which is actually who we really are. And
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
I say that we're here experiencing what we're not, so that we can appreciate and more fully understand who and what we are. And
absolutely.
that doesn't fully explain it, but it's the best that I can come up with on explaining
Yeah,
it. And so, it's like sitting in a nice warm house with a fire, roaring fire, sipping your favorite hot beverage with a loved one, right? You can't really fully appreciate and understand that unless you actually been out in the bitter cold before. So there's the contrast.
that's a great analogy. You're so right. Yeah, if you'd always had that warm, cozy fire, it would be no big deal. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
you take it for granted. And
yeah,
I sometimes
absolutely.
tell people, hey, they say, why do you think we're here? I said, well, we were bored being omnipotent and and omnipresent and all that, so to speak.
Absolutely. I mean, how can we be separate from that? Whether it's, Adam and Eve, they had to come from that source, whether it's the Big Bang, like there, there's no way we can't be not connected to that. Like we're all an extension of that. So once I
Yeah,
got that, I started to find it within me. It's like it's right, it's been there the whole time. I missed it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Even the scriptures say that God created evil too. It's like,
I
wait,
believe that.
whoa, wait,
I
wait a minute, what?
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
that's a hard pill for people to swallow because we want to project our own um dark side um and say, oh, theirs is worse than mine, so mine's not quite so bad, or whatever. But again, without all the trauma that I went through as a child, without my experience of that altered reality, um, there is no way I would be here. There would, you know, I, there's no way that I would be here. So I'm so grateful for every single bit of it. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
It's
And
made you strong, and it's taught you a lot about yourself and about life and so on.
absolutely.
Some of the more prominent people in the world that have done some great things, and different people on different scales have had some of the most traumatic lives, and that's what
Yes.
inspired them to do, and help others or whatever it was that they're doing. And would they be that person without having gone through that trauma? Probably not. So there is a place for it, and it's not to discount some of the horrific things that people have gone through,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely. And it's not, when I say forgive that those that have really hurt you, that's another thing that doesn't, people have a really hard time with that, but
yeah,
that's where the key is. And honestly, I had thought that I had forgiven people, but there was still some junk in there that, and I recognized that when I would get that visceral feeling in somebody's face, it's like, oh, there it is. There
yeah,
it is.
yeah,
So life is talking to us all the time. And I know all this was happening before I had this awareness that I have now. I just wasn't tapped in and tuned into it. Now that I am, I can't unsee it. Like I can't unsee the relationship and how things unfold and how people are being and have compassion for people that are, you know, being jerky and like it just looks different now. Well, it looks so different.
yeah, yeah. I mean, your programming sometimes still kicks in and you still react, but then
Mm,
usually you catch yourself sooner, or like you say, you after you go away or go home, you go, oh man, I should have handled that different. Whereas before you just pass it off, oh, that person was a jerk and an idiot, and they're still an idiot, or whatever. I mean, I
yeah.
catch myself doing that still too, and I've been on this journey for about 30 years, so
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, I just recently had one. This is a podcast, and I shouldn't say this, but I'm totally
no,
transparent now, where I would have kind of hidden behind things. And I knew that I was going in to talk to my boss, and it was going to be a challenging conversation. Where before I would have just gone in fired up and wanting to be right and being justified and all that,
yeah.
angry and icky. I did a meditation the night before, and I hear this lead with love. I was like, oh man, lead with love.
I want to kick some ass. Dang it.
Lead with love, really. So lead with love. And I was like, okay, since I've been so blessed since all of this has happened, just like whenever I get those things, I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And darn if it didn't work beautifully. There was no messed up energy. I went in and stated my case. She stated her case. There was a big hug at the end. It was like, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And the only thing that was different is I followed that voice. And everyone has that voice within them. They just have to be able to tap into it. And it's the voice that like says, do something. You're like, oh man, no.
I call that one of those this shit works moments.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. But again, it makes life really fun. And then you know, where that could have just been a terrible day, week, month, maybe a firing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How it can go down the rabbit hole. It ended in a hug. Like, that's like, yeah. So I much rather do it this way than my old way.
So tell us a little bit about your experience with your friend that went through that had cancer,
Yeah.
and if you
Yeah.
don't mind, if you feel like it.
No, not at all. Not at all. Because it's a beautiful story. And you know, people have I've been dealing with death and dying for over 20 years. And I um I always knew that we are still connected to those that we have a bond with. But of course, since my whole journey and my unfolding with my accident and my new awareness, it cannot be undone. And so I like to share this story because a lot of people are mourning their loved ones, and
Yeah.
they lose themselves after they lose the physical form of somebody they care about. So if somebody's out there that is in that position, I share this story in honor of you, and hope that you will be open to receiving the communication that you're getting from your loved ones, because it's coming to you. You just have to be open to seeing it. So with my friend Brett, he we had a very wonderful last 16 months of his life. He was in the hospital for 4 months, and he was supposed to die. They He had an internal bleed that they could not cap, and so they sent him to the hospice house where people go to pass. And he said that on the way from the hospital to the hospice house, he felt the miracle happen. And he knew that he was going to be around a little bit longer. He didn't know how long. So he had cancer, and it had gotten into organs and that sort of thing. So that's why he was having that bleed they couldn't get. He gets into the hospice house. He tells me the story, and he's like, "You got to get me home. I want to be on my front porch." And I worked at hospice at the time. I was like, "Okay, I'll pull some strings. We'll get you out of here." We got him home, and that guy went from being bedbound to, we got to go to the Keys and stroll around. You know, we had a little golf cart, and we got to really live some magic. And he was the one that, as he was moving through this whole forgiveness thing, because he knew he needed to clear some stuff before he could get to heaven, because he was very traditional as you are. And he was the first person that I would start listening to, because I was like, that guy just had a miracle. Because he only had 3 days.
Just for the record, I'm not traditional. I was
Oh, I'm
traditional.
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't. And yeah, and please
That's
don't
okay.
take offense to anything that
No,
I
I don't
say.
take
But
offense. No.
and I totally appreciate people that my best friend is Catholic diehard, and she's been able to shift some of her thinking, and we get along just fine. Like, she's my best friend, so I love anything that works for somebody.
I'm considered a
Um.
heretic by the traditionalists, so
Oh, I might be too. I might be too. I does, you know, there's no label to put on that, I don't think. I mean, we do, but it separates us, right? It
yeah.
separates us. So backing up to my friend, very magical time. They brought him home. They said max 3 days, and 16 months later, he was still with me. So he
Awesome.
knew he had to do some forgiveness. And so we'd get up in the morning, and we would do our little bitch session about whoever was pissing us off. And we would cry, whatever we needed to do. And then his time, he was living on borrowed time. So that only would last for an hour. And then get rid of it, and we would go out and live life. we would go all around town. We would go to the springs. We would, we just lived in the moment. And he taught me how to do that. And it was like, I'm wow, what a gift.
Yeah.
When he there was a day before he passed, maybe a month before he passed away, I was going to get some medication at the pharmacy for him. And it was dusk and my lights were on, and I see this little flicker in the front of my left side of my car. And honest to goodness, I thought, oh, that looks like a little fairy or a little angel. And it just kind of hung with me as I'm driving down the back country roads. And so when I get home, I'm sharing with Brad. I said, Brad, I just saw the coolest thing. I have no idea what it was, but it was flickering in my light. And he said, oh, yeah, that's an angel moth. I said, angel moth? I'd never heard of an angel moth. And he said, those big green iridescent angel moths, the iridescent, and that's probably what was flickering off your light. And I thought, oh, that's cool. So I look it up, and it's actually called a lunar moth, right?
Okay.
And so we had had that conversation, and I just told him how cool it was, and then we went on. I'd always said to him, now, if there is a chance that you can talk to me and we can communicate, you better do that. You better do that, and I'm going to be looking for you. So he said, if I can do it, I'll do it. Like, I'll do it if I can do it. So we had a little pact. And after he passed away, I actually was there holding his hand. I saw his spirit leave his form. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced. And I had been a hospice nurse for a long time, but I still had a little bit of that fear and of the unknown and not diving in. With him, I decided to be fully present with him, and I was able to experience that exchange. And if anybody's going through that, if they can shift their thinking around it, it is such a magical time to be in the presence of somebody that's passing. It's holy. It's very holy. It's
Yeah.
a birthing into a new realm, and it's very holy. Um, but we have such a distorted view of death and dying that people are afraid, just like I was. But it is a magical thing. So after he passed, there was a couple places he didn't get to go, and so I put his little ash box in my car, and we went for a trip to the mountains. And I took him to a couple breweries and spinked him around on the ground, not at the brewery, but around in the mountains and into the river.
Right.
And I was like, okay, in my mind, I'm thinking, I wonder if he'll like let me know now, and kind of testing it a little bit. And it was a magical time. I was gone for a week, just driving around through the mountains and reminiscing and thinking of all the lessons I learned, and practicing that connection with God, and knowing that life was gonna shift. And I was really starting to lean into life and allowing it to happen instead of me pushing it, because I did a really terrible job when I was trying to drive it. And so my whole, things were really starting to, that this was the catalyst of things starting to come on very rapidly. And I get back, I drive in, I live out in the woods. And so I drive into the driveway, and I open the car door. Normally I just barrel out of the car door. I was sitting there for a second reflecting, wow, that was nice. But you didn't talk to me or anything, right? I didn't have that, whatever. I was preconceived in my idea, in my mind. Open the door. The light is shining down on the ground. And hold on. Can you see him?
Yeah.
Yeah. That perfectly intact Luna Roth that we had had the conversation, just him and I, was on the ground. And I was like, oh, there you are. There you are. And it doesn't have any scratches on it. Like, it should have been barreled over by the dogs. It had already passed. It was just the skeleton. I have only seen one since that, and we'll be celebrating 4 years in June.
Wow.
So, and since then, I've had a lot of communication with them, but we believe that they're nowhere to be found, and they're gone. And the grieving can be really hard and challenging, but they are right there if we're willing to look for it.
Yeah. I think that what you said about death and dying in our culture and society, yeah, we need to change that. And it's such a negative, uh, terrible thing, and it's just a transition to a new phase.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. We are all returning to that light from which we came.
yeah,
And absolutely. And you hear it in the near death experiences too. There's some commonality. I didn't get that far because I was too afraid of it, but there's some commonality and they're in a tunnel and they're going toward a light, the light that they are, the light that they came from. We just forgot that the light is still in there. So we
yeah,
really got to we got to turn back and get connected to it because that's where life starts to get fun.
yeah. I have read and
Excuse me.
listened to hundreds of NDE experiences, and a lot of them say it was like waking up from a dream. Said like this life is the dream, and that was like real. That was the real life. And I thought, first time I heard that,
Absolutely.
I was kind of blown away, and I went, wow. But then
Yeah.
it
And
resonated though, you know.
absolutely. And if I can share that, even though my whole process, it wasn't the traditional near death experience, it was more of a hellish experience. But remember, it was my own internal hell. It it was so real. Like it's was so real. Like it's still right there with me.
Yeah.
So I can see everything very vivid. In an hour or two, I'm not going to remember the details of our conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is realer than real in that aspect. Like or like you wake up from a dream and you remember it by the middle of the day, you don't remember it anymore. Like this is in there. It's ingrained in who I am. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a characteristic, yeah, of a lot of NDE experiences, and they, I can remember it just like it was, happened yesterday or something like that.
Absolutely.
Whereas
Yeah.
dreams, yeah, I used to keep a dream journal so that I could remember dreams, and plus it helps you remember them more when you're focused on that, where your attention is.
Mm-hmm.
But still,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but still little details, they start fading almost immediately in a
Mm-hmm.
regular dream. Now I've had meditations and I've had a couple of experiences that where I remember them just like they were yesterday,
That's very
and
cool. Yeah.
and so I haven't had an NDE, but they were kind of like NDE like experiences, and so
No, right. And so I recognize that very much so because I've been able to reach that place too. And those are just as vivid. The ones where the big lessons came, the message is very vivid. It sticks with you. So yeah, I know and you there is a shift, there is an energy exchange that happens in those, and it's so beautiful.
yeah, and so yeah, some dreams are just it's just all your junk bouncing around in your head, and that doesn't make sense half the time. But some dreams are messages, I think, from your higher self or God, if you will, and those are the ones that stick with you. I've had a
Yes.
couple of dreams like
Yeah.
that have stuck with me, whereas most of them, yeah, I can't remember them. And it's interesting to go back and read some of my old dream journal stuff, and go, oh, and I also got in the habit of writing down my interpretation of what it meant too, and that was helpful because if I had just gone back and read it without that, and was like, oh, what the heck was that all about,
Yeah. Yes. Do you have like a little key code or whatever?
So,
Yeah.
so I wrote down my interpretation. I go, oh, that's what I thought it mean. But sometimes I've done that though and gotten different stuff, whereas contemplation to me is a part of meditation that
Absolutely. Yes.
most people don't know that. They think you just go into meditation, you come out of it. And I've actually gotten more out of the contemplation after the meditation, after I contemplated what I saw and heard in meditation, and get more downloads of information, and that stuff has stuck with me on some cases. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Very cool. It's very cool.
so well, is there anything else that you want to add or that you wanted to talk about that
Um,
seems
I,
related or
yeah, maybe I do want to go with, so we talked a little bit about the death and dying and the fear that people have around that. And maybe if I can shed a little bit of light of what I think happens, that if people are experiencing this, I do believe that like me, my subconscious wounds were so deep that I could not have accessed them any other way except for being in that altered state of reality. And what we will sometimes see when people are passing is what we call terminal agitation. And I believe that people are moving through what I was moving through, their own internal stuff. that they
Yeah.
haven't unpacked, and haven't let go of, that kept them bound, in this physical form. And so, what I can share about that is there absolutely God is there the entire time. Like I said, the light and love was right there above me. People will move through this, the light will shine on it, and you will see it from a completely different perspective. And then you are freed. I'm just lucky enough that I am freed now, and a lot of people can be freed now, but I can assure you that if you see someone struggling or what we think is struggling, it is same like me. That lady that was watching me probably thought I had, what is going on? She's possessed, but it wasn't. It truly is. You're just working through some stuff and it doesn't last. And the light's right there. And as soon as you look up at it, it's going to show it to you in a different perspective where you are set free and the ego's released. And so, there is nothing to fear if somebody's moving into that and they recognize they're going through some scary thoughts or seeing different visions in their head. That's exactly what that is. It's just stuff to be looked at, not to be feared. There is no hell. The hell is that we're going through if we have to go through that. That's not a destination.
Awesome. Yeah, people need to hear that and understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I agree. Hell is a state of mind, and so I think that even in NDE experiences, like I said, I've read and listened to hundreds of them. They're colored by the people's mindset sometimes.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
you're getting things that represent things to you to communicate the message, but then there's also the commonalities of like the life review, that type of thing. And there's exceptions. There always is.
And there's no two stories that are exactly the same, right? It is, we have our own life journey, our own story, our own mission here. And so, of course, your soul's imprint that has been carried through this life holds that. And whatever that is how it's going to be shown to you. So if it's through Jesus, you'll see Jesus. If it's through, God, you'll see God. If it's through but it is based on the individual, I believe, on
Yeah.
how that works.
Yeah, because some people that are skeptical, they say, well, the Christian sees Jesus and the Buddhist sees Buddha, and the Hindu sees Krishna. So how could it all be true? And it's like,
Of
well,
course they do. Of course that's who they see
that's
because
their
that's who, yeah,
that's their representation. That's who they understand as
absolutely.
God or source or what have you. And
Yes.
so and we are creators. I believe that we are creators of our reality here and on the other side too. And so you're actually creating that scenario because that's what's most comfortable to you. That's my theory anyways.
I'm so glad that you said that because that kind of is a great segue to say that I truly believe that we are powerful creators. We can create and manifest in this reality, but we can also create and manifest our end of life journey. So you might not be able to dictate what it is that your physical form is going to die from, cancer, accident, whatever, but you can get in a place where you visualize what you want that to be like. And I can assure you that energy that you put into that from a place of the heart will move you in that direction. So I had one gentleman that I was able to do that with. He was what they consider an atheist. He was very open to hearing this sort of thing. And again, I know that it's a stretch for a lot of people, but he was very open to me talking to him about creating his end of life journey and what that would look like for him. And so through the months that we were working together, he shared that his journey was going to be starting in a forest and then he was going to be climbing a mountain and then he started to get excited about what was coming next when he was very fearful before.
Wow.
And so I was blessed enough to be with him as he was taking that final exhale. And it was the first and only time that I was able to coach it in a manner where I was saying, go, Joe, go, like get up that mountain. You're almost there. Because then it can be a little bumpy. And
Yeah.
just like when we're birthing into this world, right? So it can be a little bumpy, but the bumpy won't last long. So I was rooting him on. It just came over me to, like, climb, climb, climb. And so that transition was, there was a smile on his face. Like, it was like he was there and I was coaching him. And when he took that final exhale, it was, and it always is, a very peaceful look that is on people's face, because that soul has completely departed and is now journeying back to the light. But the the what happens is, at the very end, the pupils will dilate, right? And his eyes were so crystal blue that when I saw the dilation and the joy on his face, the feeling that came over me as if it was moving through me was a high that no drug I've ever done has got
Yeah.
me on. It was magical. And so I am confident that where you are in your state of mind and your state of being is what you're going to experience. And so with him, we were deliberately and intentional about creating his journey, and it turned out beautiful. Um, if people will move away from the fear and embrace that and really start to talk about it and engage with it and understand that it's just a birthing into the non-physical, and what is that? Nothing can be created or destroyed. It only changes form.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just our energetic soul with its life experience is coming from the physical form back to the source from which it came, with a whole bunch of information.
Yeah. And a
Right?
whole bunch of new experience. Yeah.
Yeah, a whole bunch of new experience to give. And and it's like, thank you, child, for coming back with that part of my experience. So God is living life with us and through us.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. That sounds like an amazing story. And have you done that with other people also now?
People have to be open to it. There's so much fear
Yeah.
around, and
Yeah.
people, these conversations, people will say it's woo woo, and I get that, because it's very different. And what I would like to say is, tap your foot into the woo woo. You can always pull it back out and do what you're doing, but there's magic here if you're
Yeah.
open to receiving it. But people, I hope to be a light to maybe shift it so that we can talk about it. And I work with people every single day, and some are, in their fear, and some are open. So
Yeah.
um I have to just kind of feel the energy, if it's, but he's the one that I did it with first and was most significant.
Wow. That's really cool. I really like that story. That's
Yeah,
awesome. And yeah, that sounds like a perfect example of how we should experience, the transition that we call death,
absolutely.
We probably
Yeah.
should stop calling it death.
I know, right? It's kind of like the God word. It can have some extra stuff depending on what your life experience, but death is pretty universal for being that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a bit negative stigma, I guess you could say.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Um, I'm sure you could probably tell stories all day long, and we might have to do this again if you're up for it at some point.
Absolutely, I would love to.
Do you have any parting words that you would like to leave the audience with, or a positive message, or I mean that
Yeah.
what you just told us was a pretty positive message, but
And the people that are supposed to hear it will hear it.
yeah,
Um, and just, yeah, it's about remembering the love of who we are. It's about recognizing that we are an extension of life force energy, and all the joy, everything that we look for externally, it's right here. So if we can just kind of turn back to ourselves and get connected with that, I meditation is a wonderful way, prayer is a wonderful way, whatever it takes, but get to know who you are, and then live from that place of authenticity and joy. And it's okay to look at the boo-boos. They're not going to hurt you. That they're to help you.
awesome. That's a wonderful message. So thanks for coming on the show and taking the time. I really appreciate it.
So welcome. You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.